Enterprise platform, right? That's all there is. Well, not quite. But I spent some time documenting exactly how to use it, because many people tell me, oh, I'll have to study later when I have time. But hopefully, in just these few minutes, I will be able to show how easy it is to use it, even if you're not inventing incredibly complex operations to land on Mars or something, but just to carry on. So first of all, what is it? What is it exactly? We can have a very long description of it with lots of details, but really what it does is that it creates deliverables. Deliverable documents, of which drawings are just a small percentage of. Drawings are the tip of the iceberg. But then we start looking at drawings declined in many, many other ways. For example, to go to tablets, we're going to have PDFs, we're going to have DWGs, we're going to have DWFs. For example, going to heads-up displays has been used now in some shipyards, etc., etc. These are all documents. They're not drawings anymore. Excel files, dumps to ERP, transfers to PLM, Excel. It's not drawings anymore. The drawings really are a small percentage of these deliverables. And what's most important, and I'll have this in my next presentations, is the concept that the deliverable is not something that we've always done. The deliverable is something that is useful, something that people need, something that people ask for. If you keep on giving people what you think they should have, chances are they will not like it. They will want something else. So involving the user, the consumer of this data information documents allows for a far greater accuracy and pertinence in the contents of the document that is published. And then with Enterprise Platform, we take away the manual intervention, which means you're not relying on people to produce these documents. And I'm working on some examples to show tomorrow how to work with different softwares all at the same time. And taking away the manual intervention of people means that you're not relying on a subjective action by a person who had to leave early, who was hungry, who forgot, blah, blah, blah. You're now relying on a system which is automated. And what's greater about that even is that this automation is not decided by SSI, it's decided by the consumer of what they need. So having said that, how does it work? It works with somebody creating some model. But in fact, this is really a picture which is confined to the SSI world. It's a much bigger picture, as we will see later, and you're not confined to the SSI world. The Enterprise Platform is a phenomenal engine to produce documents from pretty much anywhere you want in your environment. But anyway, going back to ShipConstructor, somebody creates a model. A model is made of drawings and of a database. We all know that. Not everybody remembers, though, that the drawings are really an input means to populate the database, and then the drawings are a picture of what is inside the database. So the heart of the system is the database, and the database contains a huge amount of information, more than you can ever input into a drawing. But you can show it in drawings, in documents, in PDFs. We'll mention it again. You can go out to Office, you can go out to Excel, you can go out to ERP. But from our side, this is what is really the key. And then we have a publisher action. And the publisher action means that we run an operation, which is an XML script, so to speak, and it is open text, so everybody can go in there and modify, change it, write their own. It's fully documented. Meaning you get a little nerd out to university, you're off to the races with it. But then the operation goes to the database, but it can also go to AutoCAD documents. It can go to any document that is interrogable. Any document that you can open with a piece of software, whatever that may be, which can do something with the contents of the document, read, write, combine, etc., etc. This is where the automation happens. And then from here, we have operations with run. They can run on your local computer, that you can run on a dedicated machine, we'll see that in a minute, and produce documents, deliverable documents, whatever they might be. And you can go from full manual to full automatic, from operated to completely scheduled, based on tasks, based on different repositories, different destinations. It's all configurable. How do you do it? Very simple. You go to Manager, go to Enterprise Platform, and you upgrade the project to Enterprise Platform. Stop. Finished. Now Enterprise Platform is activated. Next, you go to your program list, S for ShipConstructor, and you go to, in my case, on my laptop, PublisherLT. If you have a full server, as we will see, you don't even need to do that. It's all up and running behind the scenes. Next, you pick the project that you want to connect to, same navigator dialog as always, and next, EnterprisePlatform PublisherLT dialog is open. Done. This is the 3 clicks that it takes to launch EnterprisePlatform in full manual PublisherLT. You go to the load manager, which is here. You go to the load manager and you go pick objects on which you will operate. Parts, drawings, assemblies, spools, systems, volumes, tasks, welds, pretty much everything you can think of is there. As a function of what you pick to operate on, you will be offered operations. And then you have a task builder. Why? Because the enterprise platform and the PublisherLT interface is very clear about this. It's not just pick one thing, execute, pick another thing, execute. No, you build publishing jobs. And you can build as many different publishing jobs as you want. You can save them, recall them. As we will see, you can run it from a batch mode. You can attach it to Windows Scheduler. So now you're creating the generation and the maintenance, the automated maintenance of an archive. This is fundamental. Why? Because in my archive, I'm not just publishing drawings for somebody to look at. I'm not going to just publish my nests for somebody to check. I am now serving the whole enterprise. And the whole enterprise is not just my company. The whole enterprise is my company, the remote shipyard, the supplier, the subcontractor, and so on and so forth. And as we will see, they should also participate to the mechanism. They should also participate to the workflow with their own information. Ties in with Pedro's presentation about shared work and not limiting the shared work to just a ShipConstructor. So the builder wants to be an easier way of picking tasks and operations and picking items and applying further selections to them. So in this case, I picked on parts. Depending on what you have picked, you have a bunch of options. These options will change as a function of what you have selected in the beginning. And then I can say, for example, I want to select specific parts or by type, by units. This will go one by one in the project with filters, by type, types, structure, pipe, etc., but with filters. Units, revisions, what happened yesterday, how's this change order going, what did Nick do last week, how many parts have been created out of the 4,000 we estimated. Assemblies, remember assemblies is not just your product hierarchy for building sequence. You can have 400 product hierarchies. You will see in one of my slides I have about 40 product hierarchies for a particular project, which we'll talk about this afternoon, which is really an assembly line procedure, very much like the car industry. And we'll talk about the similarities of that approach, the industrialization of your process, even if it's a one-off, versus the complete do-it-yourself style manufacturing. Individual drawings, pools, systems, tasks, volumes, and then you start getting things like UDAs, dataset properties, GUIDs, SQL. So here, at least in these 3, you're now digging deeper into the database, and you're digging deeper into the database using, for example, the APIs that we have, the several APIs around, or using queries. Finally, when you've done your selection, and this is what it looks like. I'm going to select. I have filters. This little symbol there allows you to filter on things, to organize things alphabetically. And from here, you can pick and choose, in this case, it's the part types, which ones you want to import. So maybe you're taking all of the parts from the project, but you only want the faceplates in this particular operation. When you click OK, this is what it looks like. So the empty dialog is now completely populated. This is the list of the items that have been acquired. You still have the opportunity to check and check. You still have the opportunities to filter and the categories and part types. So you're never stuck with that initial, if you went a little bit too deep, or if you want to have several selections in the same job, fine, you can do that. Then you select the operations. The operations are operations, which means I have a bunch of data, a data set, parts, and an operation will be, give me a PDF, give me Navisworks, give me an Excel report for each part, for all the parts together, and so on and so forth. These are the categories of operations that have come out through my selection. And there are several of them, and this is where, from time to time, a new one will be added by SSI, but this is also where you can ask to have a different operation, and you also have other filters as then that you can apply in the same dialog. I decided for my selection for this exercise to go simply pick a couple of operations. I said I want an export part export my parts to a DWG file. I want to export my parts all together to a Navisworks drawing, and I also want an Excel report from my parts. So I went into the DWG, and then I went into the Navisworks, and then I went into the, cannot see from here, XLS. Okay? You're never stuck. You can always go back. It's dynamic. Finally, I also have filters that I can apply. And if I'm looking for things, I can apply to the filters to operation, what to apply to, and the output type that I'm going to select. This is just an alphabetical, just a matter of saying, alphabetical way to going through a much longer list of things. We now have, I actually counted more than 150 operations which are available to everybody. As you install ShipConstructor, you have them available, so there can be quite a few. And I always suggest try them out. Select a couple of parts, select one drawing, just try them out, see what comes out, see what happens. Sometimes the titles cannot be long enough to tell you exactly what's happening. There is an explanation in the manual, so there is a lot of support in literature in that respect. And finally, I decided to select all of my format types, which in turn is gonna give me more operations. Now, in addition to my selection of items, I actually have a type. This is given to me, and which operation will I run on all of these items. This is because at the first line, I applied my selection of operations to all of the parts, this magic button here. And it was going to be export to a DWG, make one NW drawing with everything, and send my report of the parts to Excel. This allows me to apply this selection of operations to all of my selection by item selection group. We'll see what this means in a minute. Then I went on, and I also selected some spools. You go back to Load Manager, you reopen the Load Manager dialog. I selected some spools, and I selected some drawings. So now I have already, in a matter of 4 clicks, 5 clicks, created a huge archive of documents and deliverables. Why? I have a bunch of things that are going to come out for my parts. A bunch will come out from my spools. And now for the drawings, I said for all of these drawings, which were output drawings, output marine drafting and so on, give me a multi-sheet PDF of drawing layouts. So I'm not just printing my model space, I'm creating a book of all of my PDFs, of all of my layouts in PDF. Now that book obviously is going to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages, so we're not going to print it, but when I save it, it becomes available online, so to speak, to everybody that has access to the repository. We'll get to that in a minute. But I defy anybody to try to do something like this manually. Next, I now decide that I actually want to do something else as well. And only for the output drawings, I want to add a Navisworks cache file and a Navisworks file, an NWF file, but also an NEWD. Why? Because the NWC I will use as a lightweight model in AutoCAD and in ShipConstructor. The NWF will allow me to collect all my NWCs in a dynamic Navisworks session that just upgrades. And the NWD, because this goes directly to those who are using Navisworks Freedom. So now I have produced information, I have produced information which goes directly to the shipyard. I have PDFs from drawings, I have NWDs from Navisworks, and the list goes on and on and on. This is what an archive is, not just a list of deliverable section drawings that we are used to giving to the shipyard. And this is really maybe 1% of what it can be once you get into it. And the nice thing about it is that you don't have to worry about it. You just have to ask, and it will be given. Now, notice that I only do this to output drawings. If I go back one slide, they're all mixed together, output marine drafting, because I collected them from the selection set, which shows me the tree in the ShipConstructor Navigator. But you can, by clicking an item type, they will immediately go into alphabetical order. So then it's very easy, and I intentionally kept few so that you could see that this is a different drawing type and this is a different drawing type. So I picked only the output ones to do that. You can also use filters over here to help you, because obviously the list gets very, 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 very long. And we're still talking about one job, by the way. Multiply that by however many jobs you can run with PublisherLT, however many PCs you can run your jobs on, and off you go. Then we have to store all this output somewhere. And the storage address is here. Right? In a previous slide, like here, for example, this is a cloud address. will have this presentation this afternoon. This is a cloud address. So I'm not even storing it in my LAN. I'm actually storing it to the cloud. Then I changed it to my local computer. But just to show, you can go anywhere you want. And of course, by job, it will go to a destination. But because my operations are open, I can actually specify a save location in the operation, which means, and we'll get into this, that I'm now building workflows as a function of the status of my model and a function of the status of my documents, which is pretty powerful. But anyway, click on Output Directory, brings up your Windows Explorer, pick your destination in French if you want, then you get it and off you go. Other things to look at which allow you to improve even on this automation, which is, do you want to update drawings before performing operations? If I'm doing an operation from the database, like an Excel dump, I couldn't care less about the drawings. If I'm printing PDFs, I do want to have an update of my drawings. If I'm printing assembly drawings, I do want to have an update of my drawings. Do you want to create a dated folder? This is to help you if you're using a main repository and then you're feeding that to a document management system, for example, very straightforward. Then you can have dated folders. So the output from today has the date and the time when the operation started running. So you can run 25 operations in the day, and they would all be stored under different folders. And finally, when you're happy, you just click Run. Depending on what you're doing, the run could take seconds or it could take hours. If you're updating 5,000 documents, obviously it's going to take a little bit longer than your coffee cup. During the run, a log is always displayed. This log is stored, so you can always go back and see what happened, and it will give you information about something that happened. So here, for example, there was a drawing that was, for whatever reason, disconnected, and it tells you what it is. And here it tells you that the job ran or did not run. You can view the logs, you can export them, and we'll get into the logs also in a minute. This is what a dated folder looks like, the date of this morning, actually, 30 September 2019 at 7:09 and 16 seconds. Now, the reason I brought this up is not just to show you the name of the folder, but to talk about what a package is. This folder contains the results of the operations which I ran. I ran some very simple operation because I only had a few minutes and there was no point in running something big at this moment in time. But the package means that we get a snapshot of the database for the items that I have selected to run the operations on. This is a key. Why? Because this is how we talked about Digital Hub, we talked about PLM, we talked about OpenPDM, we're going to talk about Nestix, et cetera, but this is a key for integration in a, let's call it quasi-real time, integration between the model and the outside world. It's one of the ways that we interact with the outside world. You will see there are more, but in this case at least, I can then take this particular subset of my project space, and by project space I mean the database, the drawings, whatever I have access with my operations, so not even necessarily limited to documents produced by ShipConstructor, and I create a data set to be used by a third party. Programming-wise, there is what we call an API, which makes it very simple to interrogate, like literally half an hour for a template, for a trial, to interrogate this data set. And why do we have this data set? Because yes, I have exported my Excel file, my PDF, my DWG, my Navisworks, but how about all the rest of the data that belongs to that data set in the database and is not being exploited in my drawings, in my documents? How about if I make that available as well to somebody else? Alternate product hierarchies is one thing. UDAs is another thing. The list, again, is very, very long. At least here I get a complete picture of what was in the database. And on that, let's expand a little bit. So we did a parts, selected some parts, then selected some even more precisely the parts, then we ran the operations, et cetera, et cetera. But there's more to it than just that. And I wanted to highlight the tasks and the criteria XML. The tasks are very important because these are the tasks that you set up in your ShipConstructor workflow. This was mentioned briefly yesterday, and Philippa told us, make sure you have a manager task, otherwise you're going to get yourself locked out. But this is exactly how you assign tasks and how you track the completion of tasks by the designated operators. Very, very important. And you want to report on those with a Navisworks file, with a DWG file, with an Excel sheet, with a dump to an ERP system that counts the hours. Of course, you can also do just the items, but also the tasks. And the XML, load criteria XML, is something that has existed for a very long time, which means I created, for example, an Excel, for example, because there are other ways to do it, there are other things that can be done. I'm going to create a template, an Excel sheet template, and I feed the template to PublisherLT, which means that PublisherLT is going to populate only those cells in those sheets that I have told it to populate. It's not going to create a brand new Excel file, it's going to write into my own Excel file where I told it to. The first example, working example that we have used, that we have seen in this is with welds. In 2014-15, dry docks, Dubai dry docks, we were using this. Okay, we're using this to integrate all of the weld information from ShipConstructor into their own weld tracking information coming from their ERP system. So we populated some columns, and their quality assurance guys went around with their tablets and actually handed on their Excel lookalikes. And they had all of their information that we don't know anything about, what's the name of the guy, and had all of our weld information. They just picked in the columns with their fingers, and they have all the options, and feed it back to the system. The same goes for volumes and UDAs. This is what it looks like when you get some UDAs. You have operators. This is what it looks like when you select volumes. This is all done from the training project. Okay, so I'm going to go a couple of minutes over, forgive me. So there are two enterprise platform flavors. You have the client and you have the server. The client runs on your laptop, on your PC. That means that it uses local resources. So while you're running that, you cannot do anything else because it's taking over AutoCAD, Navisworks, Office, whatever, and it continues to switch focus back to the window that it's working. So it's best to do lunchtime or after hours. You can run as many as you want on as many PCs as you want, as long as you have enough licenses to do whatever it is that you're doing. For example, if you're running an Excel report, you will need an Excel license. If you're running a Navisworks, you'll need a Navisworks license. So you can then run it in batch files. You can trigger those by Windows Scheduler. In Publisher, you fully automate this thing by using dedicated machines for the server, and then we have what we call nodes. And the nodes are individual processing stations for the different operations. So you can distribute your work, experiment a bit on the duration of the operations, but you can really get a hell of a lot of work out of your individual PCs. If you have 10 structure licenses, you also have 10 AutoCADs, you can run 10 PublisherLTs all at the same time, right? Which publisher do you want? Well, if you like pushing buttons, stick to a PublisherLT as is. Remember to click the button before you go home. Hope that there is no power cut and that your laptop doesn't run out of battery and you're okay. You can batch it using Windows Scheduler. If you have more users, we're going to see this product later today. There is a way of sort of managing different parallel runs. If you have even more users or more requirements or need more time, definitely go for the server version, Publisher, and have as many nodes as you want. They will be running on the dedicated virtual machines and whatnot. If you want more of everything, well, then definitely you have to go to the server version. One step up would be the digital hub. Now, with my server version, I'm feeding all of this information out, not just to files, not just to documents, but to the digital hub database, which means, as Danese explained yesterday, that now it becomes a web application, and all of that information is available to anybody, anytime, without even asking. They don't even have to connect to you. And if you want to go to the top level of what we have today, obviously that would be the PLM system. Okay, so we're getting to the end, and I apologize for going a bit over time, but I really want to finish this. So when you look at what you can do in the open architecture, you can read with ShipConstructor, you can write with ShipConstructor. You can also go beyond ShipConstructor, and I'll show a couple of simple examples tomorrow. I can actually operate other programs from my operation. And I can use AutoCAD to operate the results of other programs. So let's keep that in mind. And you have quite a ubiquity in terms of what you can do. Later today, we're going to show some interaction with Revit, for example. And finally, because in my operations I can do that, I can run processing of data and information. So we go quickly through this, but this is a flow that I will describe in a later presentation, and it's a work in progress versus a release flow. How do I assign a document to a work in progress flow, and how do I assign a document to a release flow? Very important. And in the first steps, so you have to do what you did, but then you can export and import. What can you do today? Well, step 0, you have to do nothing. Just clean your AutoCAD drawings. There are operations, they open the drawing, zoom all, purge, get rid of the X-rafs, unhide everything, save the drawing. So every night, you reset your drawing to the initial usage state. Then look at what the documents you produce today. Load a couple of operations to produce just those documents, nothing more, and the rest will follow. We said there are 150 operations available out of the box. Chances are there is one for everybody. And that's it. Sorry for the overtime. Thank you.